that we got at a garage sale and many years ago, and we love it.
A lot of work.
Yeah. So our timer is Ross. Ross, could you tell us when 1 minute is up? And everyone can use the chat to give feedback to Sharon, and her evaluator is Nagam, who will be working on her evaluation. I'd like to call Partha, our TableTopics master, who will lead us in TableTopics. And Partha, just explain briefly how TableTopics works and why we do TableTopics.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Table. Excuse me, Mr. Toastmaster for the day. So my name is Partha. I'm your impromptu TableTopics master. So I'd like to just take a minute to explain how the whole TableTopics works. So in Toastmasters, we have two sections. The one we just had, which was prepared speeches, which you basically take time to prepare and then review and practice. And then there's this additional skill that we all need in our life, that is to be able to quickly think on our feet and be able to answer and speak on a topic. And I'm sure this has personally helped me quite a bit. Previously, I used to be just waiting and just be blank. But then over time, working with Toastmasters, I've been able to hone the skill to quickly speak impromptu. And that's what it is all about. And in this particular section, I have about 15 topics. And as the speaker, you can get to choose like a random number, and then I would just read out so that I'm not giving you any specifically tougher questions than the other ones, because that's something you have chosen. So with that being said, who wants to go first? And again, this is about 1 minute minimum that you have to speak, all the way to like 3 minutes. So the timer will be showing the green and then or yellow and then red, or however Ross is doing that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ross. Yeah, how are you showing the timing?
I could just turn the video screen on and show the cell phone.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Ross.
Sure.
Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Like I said, I have between 1 through 15. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Yeah, awesome. Dan, which number would you like to pick?
Number one.
Number one. And again, I think a lot of these are quite easy, but as a fair warning, some of them are slightly more challenging, but I would like to push you guys to, that's how we grow, to try to do some of these, just as a fair warning. So the first question is, when does silence convey more meaning than words? I repeat, when does silence convey more meaning than words?
Thank you for that question, Partha, Mr. TableTopics Master. So fellow Toastmasters and guests, I was asked the question of when, at least this is how I'm interpreting it, when can silence be more powerful or meaningful than using words? I think this is directly translatable to what I've learned through Toastmasters, the importance of the pause. Now, I am very inclined to use filler words such as or so. However, it does make more of an impact to just take a breath, recollect one's thoughts to move on from one sentence to the next. And I'm trying to be very specific about doing that right now. And I think, yeah, that does have a lot of emphasis. It gives the time for people to whom you're speaking to take a moment and reflect upon what you just said, albeit for a split second. And I think that's very, very helpful. So I think in those circumstances, if you're making a really important point, if something is very serious and you say your sentence, then pause. That's very helpful. It gives your audience time to react to it. If you say something funny, you know, people are giving, you think of comedians like Jerry Seinfeld, if he's out there doing his bit, his piece, he makes a joke, he stops, he waits for the audience to laugh or what have you, and then he moves on. So I think in those circumstances, the power of the pause is very important. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Ben. Like I mentioned, it was quite a challenging topic for sure, and you nailed it perfectly. And that's something we can all take and use for our speeches. I'm sure I can, because I tend to use a lot of and as also. It's something I'm working on. Who wants to go next?
Partha, I'll go. I'll take number 10.
Number 10. Number 10. The question is, what does your joy look like today? What does your joy look like today?
Mr. Table Topics Master, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, I was asked the question, what does joy look like for me today? And I'm glad the question asked about today, because to me, joy is actually different from day to day. And it differs by the quality of the day you're having, the things that you're enjoying in life. Most of the time, it's my family, the things that we go through together, the beautiful memories we make. Today, my joy was coming in on a Monday morning and knowing this is the beginning of the last week of school. Yes. And our students will be finishing off the week Thursday. Our teachers will be finishing off on Friday, going home, and we will be ending the school year soon after. I have goosebumps right now just thinking about this. It has been such a long and tiring year. I love my job. However, this year, even I, the very patient, you could call me my imminent because of all the patience I have. However, this year has been very tiring. And I was counting the days until the end. And today coming in was an awesome joy. And I loved every moment. I waited until 4 o'clock. And I can't wait until 4 o'clock of June 18th. And that would be the most joy I'll have. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Naga. It's always interesting to see how we all have different versions of our own joy, and then even different versions across different days and different months. And it's really interesting how our words are different. So who wants to go next?
Hey, I'll go.
Ross?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 1 through 15 and 1 and 10 are taken. Oh, wait,
I'll
yes.
go with 5.
5. Can you describe your life in a 6-word sentence? Can you describe your life in a 6-word sentence?
Mr. Table Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. Ray, when you talk about pauses, 6 words are really difficult to describe your life in. The first one that would have to come to mind is having to deal with changes. Life is all about different stages, different experiences, and going through different, whether it's work-related or life-related. And for me, the biggest thing adapting was the culture at work. And basically, when I started it was still in the era where you were expected, especially working with Ford, it was expected that when you start with them, that most of the people stay over there until retirement. And that changed quite a bit. That's no longer the case. And we got spun off as a separate company. And then generally, it just seems like there are a lot of changes. So the adaptation for the different items that happen, that's something that has to be one of the top ones. And describing all the other events, it's just adapting to those things. As you know, the current situation, I guess more changes are imminent, and we'll have to continue and adapt to whatever happens with the economy and whatever happens with the current world situation. Mr. TableTopics Master.
Thank you, Ross. Yeah, there was definitely something that I've been observing too. A lot of changes across Ford and in the world as well. So something to keep in mind. Who wants to go next? I see some new faces. Who's that?
Hi, Edgar.
Hey, Edgar. So yeah, we have 1 through 15. 1, 5, and 10 are taken.
I'll do 7.
7. Okay. What has life taught you recently? What has life taught you recently? That's the question.
Thank you, TableTopics Master, and dear Toastmasters and guests. The question that was posed to me was, what has life taught me recently? So one of the recent lessons in my life as I approach middle age is that life is very short and that you should enjoy every moment like it's your last. So one of my main takeaways from this recent learning is that when you're a kid, time seems to go by really fast. You're not really worried about what's to come. You're mostly focused on what the present is. And I think that's one of the things that being young and being like growing as a child, that's one of the most enjoyable things. So as you start to grow and you start having all these responsibilities, you tend to worry about many different things. And with a job comes a lot of stress, responsibility. So that can be overwhelming. So there comes a point in your life where sometimes you reach a breaking point, and that's the point at which I was not too long ago. And so I was able to reflect and to really consider slowing down, taking things a little bit calmer, and doing my best to go back to the old way of not stressing so much. So that is one of the things that I've learned recently in my life. Back to you, TableTopics Mouse.
Thanks, Edgar. That's a lot of wisdom. Think about and ponder.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Awesome.
This is Carol.
Carol, what number would you like to pick?
I'll do 15.
15. All right, 15 is when you close your eyes, what do you see? When you close your eyes, what do you see?
Thank you, Mr. TableTopics Masters, and thank you to my fellow Toastmasters. My question was, when I close my eyes, what do I see? So one of the things that I struggle with a lot is anxiety and racing thoughts. So every time I close my eyes, I think of all the things that I have to do that I haven't done, or things that are very stressful. And when that happens, I have been trying to remind myself that I need to take the time to relax, because otherwise it has a big effect on my anxiety, which has lately affected my health a lot. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has had a hard time because of COVID. So I have been working a lot on really trying to either see positive things when I close my eyes or nothing, and try to immerse myself in that empty feeling of nothingness, because that is truly when I feel peace. And when I immerse from that sort of scenario, I am able to focus better than when I close my eyes and see my racing thoughts. Back to you, Mr. TableTopics Master.
Thank you, Carol. That was quite a challenging question, if you ask me, and you did great. Yeah, although I would have said it really depends on the circumstances. If I'm trying to sleep, I would see literally everything other than, yeah. So I can totally relate with what you're trying to say. So who wants to go next? Do we have time? Perfect.
I'll go.
Steve?
Partha.
Sure. So 1 through 15, we got 1, 5, 10, 15 out.
Okay, I'll take 2.
2. What small act of kindness were you once shown that you will never forget? What small act of kindness were you once shown that you will never forget?
Mr. TableTopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. There's been many small acts of kindness, but when I close my eyes, this is the one that I see. And it's from when I was in 4th grade. I gave a speech about this. I called it the Mean Lunch Girls. And I was very small for my age. I was the smallest kid in the class, including the girls. And we had lunch girls come in to keep order in the class, to give the teachers a break during lunchtime. And the lunch girls seemed like they were really big. They were in 6th grade. They were way bigger than me. And they would always take my seat. Now, I thought it was because I was the youngest kid. I mean, not the youngest. I was actually the youngest also, but I was the smallest. And that caused me a lot of anxiety because I didn't know what to do. I didn't think I could eat my lunch standing up. I'd just have to wait, and I thought everyone was looking at me. So I set a trap for that lunch girl, and she sat on my seat and got wounded, and I got in trouble. And the teacher was out, or they were yelling at, the 2 lunch girls were yelling at me. And afterwards, I felt like I was crying. And Jay Lewis, who was a guy in the class, he came over and sat next to me. And he just was a friend. He just was a friend to me. I still remember it to this day. All he did is sit next to me. And so now whenever I go to some like meeting at work or something, and I just see someone sitting by themselves, I like to go over and just sit next to them. Mr. TableTopics Master.
Thank you. Steve, a friend indeed is indeed a friend, or a friend indeed. I probably screwed that up, but who wants to go next?
I can go.
Oh, I see. New. Do you have a number?
Oh, I'm not sure what's still available, so just pick a random one for me.
Okay. Yeah, I see this one. So, what is the difference between living and existing? What is the difference between living and existing?
Mr. TableTopics Master, fellow Toastmasters. I actually think about this question a lot as somebody who has not yet reached middle age, very far from that. I often find myself kind of existing in some ways. I feel like I'm not doing enough. I'm not brave enough to do things. I'm too lazy. And I try really hard to motivate myself, to push myself. Be like, Noor, you've got so many hours in the day. You can do all these things. You can do stuff. Why are you just sitting here? And for me, I think that is the difference between living and existing, because when you're just existing, you're just there, and you're not really contributing anything. You're just a thing in the universe, a kind of like a blob. That's at least how I feel sometimes. And I feel like I need to get this blob going. Like I need it to do stuff. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard to get yourself to do things, and you beat yourself up for it, and you're like, oh, you're not good enough, you haven't done enough. And then other times you just need to figure out that balance. How can I still relax and give enough care to myself, and how can I do these things and contribute without beating myself up and making myself feel bad about it? Mr. TableTopics Master and fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you. Did not go. I see Sharon, Shehu, and yeah. You guys want to go? Unless we're out of time.
Yeah, we've got time. Yeah.
I see Sharon. Sharon, do you have a number?
It's 9.
9. 9 is an interesting one. I really like it. What does the American dream mean to you? What does the American dream mean to you?
Mr. TableTopics Master, fellow Toastmasters and guests, I've been asked the question, what does the American dream mean to me? It seems to me that at one time the American dream was simpler, but I think it's always been a complicated thing depending on who you are and where you came from, what your history is, your family history. I think the biggest thing for the American dream is to feel that you have the opportunity to pursue your interests, to become as successful as you can be, but to do it without hurting others, and to do it without ridicule from others who see differently than you. There are a lot of people who have come to this country because of all the hardships in their countries, seeking the opportunity to be just that, to come and to live in a peaceful environment where they can raise their families, have an education, just feel like they can contribute, not be a blob, exist, be happy. And so I think that to me, is the American dream, is to be able to live in what you think is a peaceful harmony with yourself and your family and your community without a fear of, without fear. And I think that's the American dream. I do remember being some of these movies where they were talking about come to the United States, the streets are paved with gold and things like that. And that's, I don't think it's money. Maybe some people pursue money, but I don't think money, I think we've had discussions about this before in different table topics, is money the root of all happiness? And I'm definitely, we need money to have our house and our food and so on, but happiness, I think, is knowing that you have the freedom to be the best that you can be. And that to me is the American dream. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks, Sharon. And I thought it was a house in the suburbs and 2.5 kids. Maybe I'm wrong.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wants to go? I see Shehu hasn't gone.
Okay, what do you have? But
I have some philosophy-based questions. Do you want me to pick one randomly?
okay, what about 20 if you have 20?
I only have 1 to 15.
Okay, 1 to 15. What about 13? Can you hear me?
Oh, it looks like Partha just froze.
Oh, so I did froze Partha now.
Yeah, you froze Partha. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, here he is. Here he is. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable. But what were you saying, Shehu? I missed that.
I said 13, 13.
13?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is a great one for you. If you could choose one book as a mandatory read for all high school students, what would you choose? If you could choose one book as a mandatory read for all high school students, what would you choose?
Mr. Table Topic Master, fellow Toastmaster, welcome guests. The question is if I should pick one book for the high school kids, what should I choose? That's a very, very interesting question for me because it has to depend on what I'm trying to help them to learn, because we have various things when it comes to integrity, purpose. But one book that came to my mind now is The Purpose-Driven Life. And I think that was by Warren. I'm trying to remember his last name now. Purpose-Driven Life. That book talk about life generally, because we all have question in life. What is my purpose here in life? Why am I living? Why am I here in the first place? And I think that book is a book that is helping. It helped me a lot when I read it, to help people direct them into life, what they should choose, and how to live life generally. And it's a way of, you can do it with group, you can choose to do it with anyone you want. It's a daily devotional book that will help you to go through, and it will talk about different things. I think that's a valuable book that I think is very useful for the kids. If, in my opinion, if I want to introduce one book, because everyone is searching for meaning in life. Why am I here? I think that would be helpful in one way to help them, direct them that there's a purpose in life, Mr. Table Topic Master?
Yeah, fantastic answer, Sheru. I think if you have our purpose and meaning in alignment, everything else can fall into place. So I feel like most of us have gone, and it's almost time. So I want to hand it over back to Steve.
Okay, thank you, Partha. Thank you for filling in as Toastmaster, as Table Topics Master. Those were very, I would say they were mostly difficult questions.